Good afternoon. My name is Bobbi Tatoush, and I am here with Andy Callicum, who is the program supervisor of the Nuu-Chah-nulth Employment and Training Program, as well as the current president of the BC Coastal Regional Council for the Canadian Red Cross. To begin, could you give me a little bit of background information about which First Nations you belong
From the
to?
Motivational First Nation. That's where my ancestry comes from, and then also I'm from Celtic, from Bella Bella. It's where my aunt married into, and I moved in with her at a young age, so they sort of have taken me in there as well.
What values did you learn through culture that you think shaped who you are today?
Well, if you look at values, I think
Yeah.
definitely, respect and honesty and just being humble. I think, just and being forthright. I mean, is values that I've picked up just from being with people like my late dad and my late Uncle Jerry Jack, and they were always people that always were honest and open with how they felt about things, and so those are some value, I guess, traditional values that sort
Yeah.
of help shape the way that I work.
What were you hoping to get from your education?
Actually, when I first started planning to go to university, it was all because of, I think I was in grade 11 or 12 in Bella Bella. I was on their student council, and um, they had a young man coming up from Nuu-Chah-nulth Tribal Council to talk about treaty and Aboriginal rights and title, Sean Atleo. And so as a rep from our student council, I was invited to go and sit in on that workshop. And afterwards, I realized, I would really like to follow in this guy's footsteps and get into treaty negotiation. So I asked my student counselor, what would be a good way to go about that, and he said, well, I'd go First Nation Studies, and the best place for that is in Saskatchewan. So I went there, and my plan was to go into law afterwards and go down that route and sort of work on land claims and treaty litigation, that kind of thing. But after taking a couple law courses, I realized that wasn't really my cup of tea to pour over hundreds of pages of legal jargon and try to interpret it in a favorable way and all that. So after I finished university, I sort of floated around. I was a youth worker for Ukiulit First Nation for a little while, and I was a truck dispatcher for one of the BC's largest trucking companies. And um, and then I found my way into this line of work, employment services, and really realized like this is a way that I can still go down that kind of path because there's so many First Nations on the verge of signing treaties. And I've found that a lot of First Nations, once they get to stage 4, 5, 6 of their treaty process, that they really want to start taking stock of what their workforce looks like and how skilled are they and what can they do to help build up their workforce. And I'm seeing this is a place for me because it's a field that I'm passionate about, and I get to work with people and not just legal papers. And so I mean, since then I've sort of stuck in this field of work, and I really love it.
What is your education background?
I've got a Bachelor's of Arts in First Nations Studies. I went to the First Nations University of Canada for my first semester and a half. No, my first 3 semesters, sorry. And then finished it at Vancouver Island University.
What motivates you to keep doing what you are doing?
For me, it's just helping people to realize their potential and take those small steps towards achieving their, what their potential is. And um, so what motivates me quite a bit is just looking at, I've lived in a lot of different reserves in Canada and reservations in the States, and a lot of people that I grew up with um, um, have struggled in finding employment and finding a career for themselves. And I really think that there's things that can be done to help that environment and help create services to help people to realize their own careers.
And how do you motivate people?
For me, it's all about working with other people's aspirations, what they're passionate about, what they really want to do, and empowering them and enabling them to do that. That's, for me, as long as I do that and I combine that with being forthright and honest in everything I do, I think that's the successful way to do things in my perspective.
What adversities have you been faced with in your current position?
Not really faced any so far. I've only been here since the end of November, so I mean, there's not been any large adversities for me, and still fairly new to this role. So it's no, I don't have huge struggles yet in my career.
Hope you don't have too many.
And lastly, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Continuing in this path, to be honest, a year ago, I didn't foresee myself being in this role for another 10 years. So, I mean, I've sort of jump-started everything. And, so it's hard to say, because 6 months ago I would have told you that this is where I would have saw myself in 10 years. And so 10 years from now, if I'm still here, then I'm fine with that, because this is where I envisioned myself.
Do you have any motivational advice for people who may see this video?
Don't underestimate the power of volunteering. When I got into this field of work, I realized that this is where I want to be, and I also realized that I wanted to be a leader in this field of work. At the time, I didn't have any management experience, any management education. So I tried to ask myself, what's one small thing that I can do to start building on that. And the way that I found I could build that experience was to join volunteer boards of directors. So I joined the board of directors for Volunteer Comox Valley, and I became a volunteer for the Comox Valley Comox Valley Community Justice Center, where they do a restorative justice program, and I was involved as a volunteer there. And then from there, the guy that is the administrator for the restorative justice program, he was the past president for the BC Coastal Region of the Canadian Red Cross. And at the time, they were looking at recruiting a young Aboriginal person to add that voice to their table. And he just happened to say, oh, well, I just know somebody that's an aspiring leader. And so they recruited me onto that council, and now I'm the president of that council, and sort of, I think I owe a lot of my success in being able to work my way forward in my career to just devoting time to volunteer causes. And I really think that there's something that really build your career and build your character, and I think that a lot of people overlook it, or maybe they don't make time for those kinds of things, but it can really add to your successes, I think.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Andy. I appreciate you doing and taking the time for doing this.